Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Rom. How are you? Let me just see. Hey, there's Carter. He's the host. Hey, Carter, can you make me a co-host?
I think I have that same issue.
Yeah, he'll do it. Yeah, there's me. I'm a co-host. That was so powerful. All right, Robin, I will now. Can I make you a I can co-host you? No, I can. Yeah, Robin co-host there.
Oh my, you're my boss?
So no, we're peers.
kidding.
So powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, you have
Yes.
a doppelganger.
Yeah. Oh, are we both on? All right.
Well, if you have long hair
Yeah.
and a pretty
Well,
necklace, and
yeah.
are you wearing a pretty necklace?
Oh no, that's Robin.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to presume that our attendees are
Oh.
able to hear us at this point.
Jonathan, can you hear us?
I hear you. We're very well. I hear you
Okay,
beautifully.
good. Oh, wait.
Well, I mean the people who are not panelists yet, the
Yeah.
attendees, are they
Yeah.
able to hear us?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Pete's on.
Pete,
Pete can hear us.
I just
Darren.
want to welcome those who are joining our Zoom so far. That I see Adam, I see Dara, I see David, Breslin, Jane, Catherine, Patrice, Pete, Robert, Samir, and Trish so far. It's about a minute before 6:30. I'd like to give this a few minutes to make sure people sign on properly.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind a few minutes of holding.
Yeah. Well, there's Frederica. She logged. Yeah, she came on as me. I wonder if I can change that. That's it.
You're just going forward. So if you're not on the committee and you're a board member, just sign in on the public link and then you'll be elevated to be
Yep.
a.
I got you. I got Frederica.
I'm assuming that's what's going to happen to me.
Yep. I'm changing you.
And thank you for being so gracious to.
Oh gosh, thanks for joining. I hope this should be interesting. I hope it's interesting. I hope. I don't know what they haven't told us what they're gonna say. You know, I don't know. You know, they might say that it's delayed 3 years. I don't know. Let's see who else. Jonathan or Janine's on. Kristen's on. Nancy. There's William. They're coming in. There's a whole bunch. 17 or there are a bunch of panelists and 18 attendees, 19 attendees. There's Dan. Adam's on. All right. We can promote Adam so he can speak.
Do we want to wait and then just do everybody at once for each of the two
Yeah.
speakers?
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich.
Yes. So powerful. Well, there's Jane. Let's see if I can.
There's Adam.
Yeah, there's
Hey,
Pete.
Adam. Hi.
See if Adam. Let's see. You see Adam on? Yeah. Let's
I
see.
did.
Oh, there.
Yeah,
There I am. Hi.
there he is. Yeah. Hi, Adam.
Frederica, how are you?
He's got the virtual bookcase.
That exactly. Hi, Rich. How you doing?
Hi. Good. Great to see you. Thanks for joining.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Hi, Robin. How are you? So
All
nice.
right.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you too. Look at you with all those books behind you.
Well, it's all fake. It's a fake bookcase.
Oh, it's like a Zoom background.
Yeah, and it's to make me look like an intellectual.
Yeah, that's why I will go with mine. Oh, no, I won't go
Ooh, Rich, yours is
No.
really good.
No, I won't go with that. Gotta be
Hi,
serious.
Rocio. I see you.
Right.
I'm waiting for a few more members of my committee. I do see Jonathan. I see Kristen. I see Rocio.
This reminds me of Romper Room. Most of you are probably too young to remember Romper Room.
Happy belated Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
Here's my new virtual background, Dan. I don't know if you like this one.
Not bad.
Yeah, it's
I think you need some artwork from the Whitney for your background.
yeah, I guess you're right. I'll go back to my toilet paper background.
There's
All
a
right.
revenue producer.
Yeah, you could sell that.
I'd like to hold for another 3 minutes to see if more of my committee signs on. If anybody has a problem with that, just mention it in chat and we'll begin. But if you can give me 3 minutes, that'd be great.
Yeah, we've got. I'm just. There's nobody held up waiting to get in, or anything like that. We didn't turn that on,
Oh,
so
there's
everyone should be in.
Georgia. She's yours and mine.
Yep.
She's a
And
double
Suzanne-
whammy.
Shirley's in. I don't know where is Susanna in it? No.
Oh, gotta wait for Susanna.
Yeah, let me see if she's texting or anything. Coral, is Coral on? There's Matt. He's in. Cool. All right.
Giving it one more minute, and those who come on late will just have to be.
Hey, Carter, are you just living in there now? You seem to, you're every night I see you in the community board office.
I do spend a bit of time here. It's easier to be loud here in the evening.
Patrice is on. I see
Yeah.
Patrice.
I'm waiting on Coral and Wayne and Patricia and Scott. Those are my four who did
Yeah,
not tell me earlier that they were not going to attend. So
I reached out to Susanna and Coral to see if where they are.
We also we have three of our new board members. I think I see William,
Yeah.
Betty, and I thought I saw and Eugene also.
Yeah.
So for those board members who don't know, we have 5 new appointments to the board, and it looks like 3 of them are joining us tonight. We introduced them to the executive committee on Monday.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Robin, can we start with intros? Will that work?
yeah, let's start with intros. So welcome everybody. You are in a meeting with the community board to joint. It's a joint meeting between the Arts and Institutions Committee and the Parks and Waterfront Committee. I will be co-hosting this meeting with Rich Cacapolo, who is the chair of the Parks and Waterfront Committee. I'm Robin Rothstein. I am chair of the Arts and Institutions Committee. And Rich will be the monitor of the chat, the chat whiz, Q&A
Yes.
whiz.
Be nice, or I will kick you out.
Right, no F-bombs,
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Yeah. I
no
will
bad
turn
language.
off chat.
So Carter, do the committee members typically introduce themselves individually on these calls, or no?
You should run it as you would normally run your committee meetings.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, I will start with my committee, and then Rich, you can have introduce your committee. I've introduced myself, Robin Rothstein, chair of the Arts Committee, and I guess there's Rocio. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Rocio Sands, board member.
Kristen?
Kristen Murding, public member.
Jonathan?
Jonathan Slaff, public member.
And we have a combo with Georgia.
George, you go. Yeah.
Hi. Georgia. Community Board 2 member of Parks and Waterfronts and Arts and Institutions.
I do not see any more people yet from my committee, so I'll let you take it over, Rich.
Well, you've got Coral.
Oh,
Joined.
Coral,
Hi,
sorry.
Coral, Parks and Arts. No, I was late. Thank
All right.
you.
I don't see Wayne Kowaldler yet, or Patricia, or Scott. Is that right? Okay, take it away, Rich.
Okay, yeah. Why don't we go through Shirley? I see you're on.
Here I am.
Shirley
Parks
Secunda,
City, Parks and Waterfront.
right? Well, I've got Coral, Wen, Elizabeth is on mute. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Elizabeth. You're on muted. No.
Elizabeth Gilmore, public member, Parks and Waterfront. I'm sorry, I'm joining with audio only because I have a weak link and it seems to work better without the video.
That's a good call. It should do. Janine?
Janine Kiley on the Parks Committee.
Okay, I see Georgia, we went through. Kristen?
Hi, Kristen Shea on Parks Committee.
All right. Matt?
Hey, good evening. Matt Metzger, board member on Parks.
Nancy?
Hi, I'm Nancy, public member on Parks.
Okay, and then we've got, I think that's who's here. I don't see Susanna yet, but we've got some other board members. Let's let them introduce ourselves. Donna's here.
Hi.
And Frederica's here. And I missed Janine. Janine too. I think Janine hadn't spoken.
I'm here. I'm still here.
Okay, good. And Valerie's here.
Dan's here.
Valerie De La Rosa.
Hi,
who did I
De La Rosa, board member, secretary.
All right. And then, yeah, that's great. And did anybody else that wants to introduce herself? I know Patrice is here, and Pete, and anybody else who wants to jump in and
Dan Miller's here as well.
Sorry, Dan. Yes. Hi, Dan.
No problem.
Sorry about that. Okay. And Sharon Williams is on too. I'll try to get her. She's having trouble being muted, but Sharon Williams is on as well. I will promote her. So I think we've got a pretty good turnout.
Yep, I agree. And
Okay.
I think we should get going, and just whoever signs on, just if you can keep an eye on who needs to be a panelist as far as our committee people.
I'll do it.
So welcome everybody, panelist and attendee. We are excited to have you here, of course, under these circumstances. We wish they weren't like this, but this is what we have, and we are very excited to, after 2 months or about at this point, we are very happy to be able to hear from you about the specific projects that we asked you to discuss, and certainly any other aspects of your organization, your hopes for the future, your anything you wish to discuss about your institution. We are open to hearing anything you have to say tonight. Our first presenters will be from Little Island, also formerly known as Pier 55. If those folks who are planning to present, if you can raise your hands, Rich will elevate you
I can do
to a
that.
panelist,
Yep.
which
Okay.
will allow you to have the ability to speak
There, I've got
and
Trish.
to share your screens, because I think you have a
Yep. Try that.
PowerPoint presentation.
I think I've got you guys now.
My understanding is we have welcomed certainly Trish, Michael, Danielle, and Eric. If I've missed anyone, raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised. So I am going to turn it over to Trish, who I'll let turn it over to whoever she feels she wants to turn it over to. Welcome, Trish and team.
Thank you. It's really nice to see everybody, even if it's virtually.
Indeed.
It's a crazy time that we're existing in. So while we always appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to Community Board 2, it's more meaningful right now because it's nice to be able to connect with our neighbors. Eric, I think you have the controls in terms of sharing my screen.
Cool.
Can everybody see
Yep.
okay? Okay.
Looks good. Great.
So I think the best news I have to share is that we are still slated to open next May. So a year from now, we hope to be welcoming some visitors. And it's, especially at this time, a very encouraging and hopeful thing to be able to say we'll have a new green space for New Yorkers in a year. Feel free to go to the next slide, Eric. Right before things got particularly crazy, we had our first 12 trees arrive, and they're still not completely planted because not all of the soil is in place, but they're there and they're being cared for. You can see the process with the crane to bring them in. We can go to the next one. And the image on the right, I think, is my favorite. just because you start to get a perspective of, it starts to look like a park now that we have actual plantings on site, but also to see the view of the city from that spot. That location that you see there is actually the height of the southeast overlook, which is at the top of the southern lawn. So it starts to give you a sense of the views and the sort of expansiveness of, even though the park itself is aptly named Little, the sense of it when you're on the site is kind of awesome. On the next slide, you'll see some updates about actually what it's like to work on the site. A couple days before the governor had ceased construction, we had actually had a conversation with our construction managers, Hunter Roberts, and had already made a determination that we were going to close for a minimum of 3 weeks. In conversations with them about the safety of the crews and the amount of time they felt like it would take to really feel like we could have a safe site, that had been their recommendation to us, and it was something that Mr. Diller agreed with. And then the governor made his announcement, so we were fortunate, I would say, in the sense that we'd already had a couple days of advanced planning to be able to start the shutdown. Now we're back. We came back to work on April 20th. And there are, you know, as you would expect, very serious protocols in place. There is a nurse at the site every morning who takes the temperature of all of the crew members who are showing up to do the work. There's additional sanitation stations. Everybody on the team has to wear a mask all day. The ways in which the crews work has changed in order to create appropriate social distancing, the amount of crew members who can be on the site. So there's a whole other level of coordination, but well worth it in the fact that we're able to continue the work. Also, just to let you know, because you know, there's been so much interest and curiosity about the process of the creation of the site. There are new pages on littleisland.org that really articulate the vision and design and construction process. I think the part that I find the most exciting is that almost everyone who's associated with this project is a New York-based company. You know, we've talked before about our joy in the connection the Hudson River has provided with companies upstate bringing the pots down the river to the site, but there's so many subcontractors that are working on this site. And like I said, with few exceptions, they're all New York State-based companies as well as New York City. These particular photos are from last week. You'll see me on the far left with my mask. I had the opportunity to get on site last week, which was great. Had not been there since early March. So a few of us went onto the site because there were a couple approvals that needed to happen. And it also meant that I got to do a walk around. I think our next slide has a video that I wanted to share with all of you because it really does give you a perspective. I took this from what will be the southwest overlook. So this is the vantage point that's 62 feet above the water. The first shot you saw was of the amphitheater, and this is just to give you a sense of the amount of change that has happened over the last few months. And that's from the camera that we have at the Standard Hotel that does a shot every day. So this is, as of Monday, what the site's looking like. And then just to let you know what's going on with our community programs, Robin and Dan in particular know that we've been incredibly active in the neighborhood over the last year plus. And we were right in the midst of all of our spring programs, and needless to say, had to postpone those programs. But our Director of Education and Engagement, Michael Wiggins, who's on here with me as well today, is nothing if not innovative and committed to staying connected to our students and families. So all of our teaching artists have been creating webisodes. They're 10-minute art making videos that we're sharing with school principals, with members of the community at Hudson Guilds and Westbeth, videos that they can share with family and friends and do art making projects at home that you can do with the things that are in your pantry. The whole goal was to make it as easy and simple as possible, and also things that both kids and parents can do together. So you can see that Kelsey created one about how to make a musical rain stick. Carl did one on how to make your own clay and then sculpt it. And then we have one coming out this Friday that's a call and response of singing. And then I would say at this point, we're in the same boat as everybody else. It's really hard to plan what your future looks like. And it's having some impact on some choices we may make in the fall when we're hoping to be able to be back in the community with programs and workshops. But at the very least, particularly in the face of knowing that young people are going to be struggling even more than ever with employment opportunities, we're trying to protect our commitment to our youth worker program and bring at least 2 people back into that program in the fall. A number of you, I think, are familiar with that. You can see Robin's photo right there because she has spent quite a lot of time with our youth workers. But just wanted all of you to be aware of that because I'm sure Michael will be in touch with some of you at some point about our process with identifying candidates. So I will pause there to take any questions or to clarify anything that I shared.
Sorry.
Hi. Oh, do I need to raise my hand? Sorry, I forgot.
Robin, let me unmute you there, Robin.
Sorry, you muted me. I just wanted to make a quick comment that I loved the 2 videos that you made. I thought they were wonderful, and I couldn't believe that I actually might have had most of those, if not all those things in my pantry, and I could have made a rain stick. So I thought that was just great, and the people were just warm and engaged. I just thought it was a great idea.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Robin, do you want to call on people? Should they?
Do we have any hands raised, or?
We'll do. Yeah, George has got her hand raised. It's we're going to go with members first. Yep.
Go for it, Georgia.
Hi, and pardon any background noise you might hear. I'm curious if you could talk more about the trees and other vegetation that will be planted on the island.
Wow. Well, let's see. What can I tell you? I mean, it's quite varied. I would say that Signe Nielsen, our landscape architect, her intention and design will feel more, I would say, like a botanical garden than what we all may be used to in an urban park. It's a very dense, lush landscape. It's also very intentionally designed to have 4 distinct looks with 1 for each season, with this goal of, while I think we all know it might be a little chilly out there in the winter, the intention is that it is no less beautiful. So I'd be happy to send you some more details from Signe directly if you're particularly curious about any specific plants or trees. But there's also obviously a very strong emphasis on native and plantings that she thinks will thrive in a marine environment.
I would love to receive that information if you could forward it to the board. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Anyone else? Dan Miller, I'm sorry.
Hey, it's great to see you, Trish.
Nice to see you too.
Even though you can't see me, but that's
but it's a nice photo.
Yes, it's a relaxing photo. Pier 55 is so important with educational programs. What kind of precautions or plans have you taken in integrating the community in a new environment that we have? In other words, I was able to watch the dance program you had up in Chelsea at Chelsea Prep. Are there any plans right now for what should happen if we only have 50% enrollment, or any kind of online or any kind of Zoom programs that you're thinking about?
I would say that Michael and I probably talked about 17 different potential scenarios just in the last week. I think we're prepared to do what's required so that we can maintain our relationships. It's really what the webisodes came out of, was a concern that having too much time away, or also, frankly, not being responsive to the needs of families right now, it is why we pursued that program. There's 4 episodes in total, but that's kind of for now. I don't know that we can give a definitive answer. I think there's just too many things in flux. But what I can say is that our commitment to our partners and our commitment to being a resource to our neighbors has not waned. And that will carry us through not only in the fall, but all the way through opening, and with the kind of programming that we'll be offering in the park once we hit next summer.
Robin, can I ask a question? Thank you. Do you anticipate, and I know it's a year away and the world can change a great deal, but have there been any changes to the designs that have come about because of, you know, the new world we live in, or were there any changes to the designs that just came about even before this crisis that you'd want to tell us about?
Certainly no recent changes to the designs. I think partially, honestly, is because we're so far along in the construction process at this point. You know, any changes now, because we're on a critical path to get to substantial completion by next spring, any change we start to make really starts to disrupt that process. And there are so many different types of crews and so many different layers to the construction schedule right now that it's really difficult to implement design changes. I would say any changes that might have happened prior, if anything, have been in service to a continuing evaluation of making sure the spaces feel as relaxed and as informal and as welcoming as they can be. You know, I'll give you an example. For a very long period of time with the amphitheater, the plan was to have what we would all consider a more traditional theater seat. You know, a discussion of a range of materials, but seats that had arms that you're used to when you sit in a formal theater. And we made a change, I don't know, it's probably now 8-9 months ago, to go to bench seating instead. And what really drove that was our desire for the amphitheater to be perceived as public space, that it wasn't only to be utilized when there were performances, but it's a really beautiful location in the park with a really lovely view of the river. And we didn't want park visitors to feel like it was only accessible if they were there to watch a performance on the stage. So by going to bench seating, it felt like it created a more informal space. It felt like people would relate to it more as public space and as an extension of the park instead of a separate section that was only dedicated to performance. And I would say there's probably a dozen examples like that that have evolved over the last year that have really just been about Mr. Diller's desire to make sure that while it's very high design on one level, it's also intended to be a welcoming, relaxed oasis. So we have made a series of adjustments in the past year to make sure that that visual message would resonate with visitors.
Frederica has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned that there's a spot that's 62 feet above the water, and I wondered if that was the highest point.
It is. There's 3 different overlooks. One on the southwest, one on the northwest, and one on the southeast. And the southwest is the highest, and that's the one that's 62 feet.
Okay, thank you. Do you recall what that was on the original plan? What kind of reduction that was from the original highest point?
I don't, but I can certainly find out for you.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Coral, Rob and I have Coral with her hand up.
So I was just thinking that perhaps during the time period that you can't actually invite people there, that the program that Parks has done, where they've been walking through with their park rangers through all the parks and putting that on Instagram and sort of giving people an outlet to see what's going on, it might be an opportunity for you, if you're going to continue keeping everyone on the payroll and trying to keep everyone engaged, for them to make sort of snippets or, you know, ways to get to know what you all are doing in greater depth. That they can do remotely or even on site with the construction site. And people might have the time and interest right now and get to know the island better in the process.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Dan, did you have a second question?
I think he might be muted.
Okay, Dan, are you, I don't know if I may have not lowered his hand. Let me try to.
Sorry about that. No, I don't have a second question. I should have brought down my hand before.
No problem. Anyone else? Robin, I think we're through members. If anyone else wants to ask a question.
Are there any members from the public who would like to ask a question or make any comments? We have 22 attendees. I am looking through the group, but I'm not seeing any hands raised. Going once, Going twice. No hands. So I'll just wrap up and say I rode by on my bicycle on the Greenway a few weeks ago. I took a picture. I'll send it to you offline. I was very excited to see the evolution continue, and it's a beacon of hope. And I can't wait to see the finished product. I know it's going to happen, and when it happens, when it's supposed to happen, and we'll be in better times then. So thanks for continuing on. I know it's all very hard for all of us. So thanks for taking the time out today to speak to us. And we look forward to, just staying in touch and, either through Zoom or offline.
Yeah. Is there a next big event we should look for, or a next big construction milestone?
It feels like there's one every day at this point because we're at such a different pace. For such a long time, it was a slow ramp up, and now it's moving at a completely different speed. So I don't know you will see some more trees arrive. So if you're walking by, you may see the crane back, lifting some trees up high in the sky, because those are we have a few coming in actually at the end of this week. Brightview, who is our landscape firm, is doing tree installation on the Friday and Saturday of the next few weeks. So you may see some more activity going on with that. But I think overall what you're just going to see is that every week it looks more like it will, if that makes sense. It's just getting increasingly easier to understand what the experience is going to be. I think that was part of why it was so exciting to be out there last week, was walking it started to feel so much more accurate. And as a result of that, you could really start to get a sense of, I was actually saying this to our designers earlier today in a construction meeting, that I think one of the things that's going to be the most exciting and surprising for people is that the park feels so intimate and expansive at the same time, and feels so like it's about community and also places for somebody to find their own little place for respite. So, and I feel like those contradictions, if you will, are going to be part of what makes it a lovely place to come back to every time, because it's always going to feel a little bit different and a little bit more distinctive and unique depending on what else is going on in the spaces that day. So I'm excited as construction continues, and if you're walking by, because I do feel like ultimately what you're going to see is less about a major day and more about just every day it looks more like it's going to.
Great. Well, thank you, Trish, and thank you, Little Island team. We are now going to
seeing you all tonight.
It was wonderful seeing you and everybody. Hopefully we'll see you in the flesh soon.
That would be great.
We are now going to hear from your very close neighbors at the Whitney. You already have Adam Weinberg elevated. I am also looking for Jane Carey, David Breslin, and Larissa Gentile. And I apologize if I didn't butcher anybody's name.
You got me here, Robin.
Yep.
Hi, Jane. Hi.
I'm going to promote that Larissa and David there.
Thanks.
They should be up.
Just want to confirm that there's no one else from the attendee list from the Whitney that needs to be elevated who joined late that we don't know about. Going once, going twice. All right. We are now moving a little bit south by, I don't know, block and a half, 2 blocks and across the street to the Whitney Museum, where I'm going to turn over to Adam in a second, but I believe that the main meat and potatoes is we're going to hear about the construction of Days End and where that got left off and where that's continuing. And then we certainly want to hear from you and or your team about anything you want to talk about as far as your, overview of what's happening now and the future. So I'm turning it over to you, Adam Weinberg, and please introduce yourself and your team and your title. Thanks.
Jane, do you want to say a word first?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Adam. I'm going to
Jane,
jump in
please
and say hi first to everybody. It's so nice to see everybody here and see our friends at Little Island, and just getting back together virtually is very meaningful for me. So thank you very much for welcoming us to this meeting. Rich, your wall of toilet paper, I'm guessing that's what that is
yep.
Yeah. I don't know where you found all that, but let us know if you've got an inside tip.
He gave me a sharp elbow. I could not get toilet paper thanks to him.
Yeah, it's getting competitive out there. So I just wanted to introduce my my colleagues here. Adam, I think everybody knows here, our Alice Pratt Brown director, is going to share an update on the museum and on Days End. And we're thrilled to welcome David Breslin, our DeMartini family curator and director of curatorial initiatives, to his first community board meeting, I think. He's going to share an update after Adam on our digital initiatives and online resources. And Robin, you mentioned Loris is on the call. You all might remember her from our last update to the Arts Committee in September. So we've got a great team here. And I'm going to do the screen sharing, which I've never done before, but I practiced. And kick it over to Adam to share an update. So.
I don't see a screen, but that's okay.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah,
nice, Jane.
Excellent.
Well done. Woohoo, you're like a tech guru. Look at you.
Thanks for the.
Wow, amazing.
Thanks for the.
I just want to first say thank you to Robin and Rich, and it's a pleasure to see so many of the board members who I've known now for quite some time. I also just want to say, Tricia, congratulations on what you're doing, Trish. It's just it's so exciting. Until 6 weeks ago, I watched every step of it out my window. There wasn't a single thing that I didn't see, and I have lots of pictures to prove it. It's really spectacular, and we're so excited to be your neighbors and to be working with you. And I think all of you on the board should know that Trish and I have been in touch periodically over the past couple of years, talking about potential ways to work together and collaborate. And I think it just adds to the vibrancy of the community. You know, it used to be Museum Mile and culture area was up where we came from and up on the Upper East Side. But I can assure you now, with all of the things that are going on in our neighborhood, it's one of the cultural meccas of New York, and we're so proud to be part of it. And thank you for inviting us to say a few words tonight. I wanted to say 5 years ago this week is when we opened the Whitney Museum with Mrs. Obama giving her dedication. You know, probably one of the most inspirational moments. That's okay. You can go to the first picture there, Jane. And this is not quite that day, but it was not long after. But one of the things we've always felt so proud of, and I hope that all of you on the community board and the community feel that, is that the whole transparency of the Whitney, its connection to the community, the idea that you look through and into the museum and out of the museum. Our whole thinking from Renzo Piano's design of the building is that art doesn't begin when you walk in the doors of the Whitney, and it doesn't end when you leave the doors of the Whitney. It's about being connected. It's about looking in all directions. And whether it's being physically outdoors or in our lobby, it's a place for community connection and for people, people to come together. And we've always felt that from our seating outside. The idea is that even if people don't come into the museum, of course, we want them to come into the museum, but if they sit outside and they want to do their emails and enjoy a cup of coffee and just be in the neighborhood and have a place to sit, we're delighted. But our lobby has always been sort of our free zone, and that our lobby gallery is always been free, and we've often had events in the lobby and events in our Largo, and I think share in many ways the kind of spirit that that Little Island is doing down the street or up the street. Next slides. It's kind of amazing. I mean, we've been open for 5 years, and normally when we were uptown, we had about 350,000 people a year, which in the 5-year period would have been, what, 1.5 million people or something like that. We have welcomed now 5.5 million people to the Whitney Museum. It's more than anybody at the Whitney ever could have dreamed. And we're thrilled because we've presented over 90 exhibitions in 5 years, and it's included the work of more than 1,000 artists during that time. Our education programs are completely subscribed. It's 30% more people than we ever had in education programs before. We have a very active team program. and they serve as ambassadors. They work as interns, our Youth Insights program, and this is where they're actually organizing our Halloween night. We have free drop-in art making workshops on weekends. We say they're for parents and kids, but in fact, I think the parents do more than the kids do, although we have nice pictures of kids doing their artwork. I think it's a great opportunity for the parents who are frustrated artists to have a chance to, and it's become a really popular feature of the new Whitney, a space that we never had in our building uptown. Next slide. You know, it's interesting now. 1 out of 7 households in our zip code are members of the Whitney, and that number of members from our neighborhood is something we never could have achieved actually in 10021. So we are thrilled because we feel that the community is so actively engaged in the Whitney. I think some of you know about the Whitney Education Advisory Network called We Can. We had a meeting last week virtually, which includes groups like Greenwich House, The Door, PS41, SAGE, American Indian Community House, the LGBT Center. You know, the Whitney, as one of my board members said in our first weeks when we opened the new museum, has really become the people's museum. It's a sense of ownership and sense of community, and we're loving it. Next slides. We've now had 2 biennials, both accompanied with lots of controversy in true biennial form. Otherwise, you wouldn't know you were at the Whitney. But I think one of the fantastic things is that we've welcomed so many artists who are having their first major museum shows, young artists whose names you may not know, who will become major figures, artists who in another generation, the artists like, you know, Willem de Kooning and Arshil Gorky and other people who had some of their very first, Chuck Close, had some of their very first exhibitions at the Whitney, and these are the next generation. And Mrs. Whitney was always committed in her studio down in Greenwich Village, always very much committed to supporting the next generation of American artists. The Whitney Museum has always been by, of, and for New York. The Met and the Modern are great institutions, no greater, but they are international institutions first, and New York City Museum second. We are New York City Museum first, I would say, and then national and international. And our grounding was always in the heart of the village, and our coming back to New York, coming downtown was coming back to our roots. And actually, you can see here on the left, some great banners by the artist Colleen Smith. And when we open again, you may get to see the videos that are currently on view, but currently not on view. But we are doing a lot of online programming you hear about, and Colleen is doing one that David Breslin will tell you about. Next slide. We still are up and alive and running in our billboards on Gansevoort Street, which I think we're, I don't know, probably about our 8th or 9th billboard. The one on the left is the Doho Sub, which I love that one because basically he put the railroad back through the building where it was originally, which I thought was a brilliant move. And we have this wonderful piece by Jumalidi that's up right now, which is just a kind of magical piece. And for those of you who are taking walks in the neighborhood, you can look up and see it adds a kind of dreamlike joy, which I think actually sort of reflects some of the stupor that we're all in right now as we spend more times in our homes than we ever thought or wanted to. But again, the Whitney is alive and present online and outdoors. Keep going. Next slides. And I think many of you remember our Warhol show, which was, I think, one of our truly greatest exhibitions, and I think probably the most popular show in the Whitney's history, with 750,000 people. And we welcomed so many people from the community in this, and it was just Warhol mania. It's hard to believe that was, what is it, a year ago now? So it was a year ago, and you know, and it's so quiet there now. Next slides. And I hope that many of you saw this wonderful free performance. That's a piece by Kara Walker. It's her calliope, which is a steamed calliope. We created a lawn in front of the Whitney. I liked it so much. I wish we always had a lawn in front of the Whitney. you know, the community gathered for a performance by Jason Moran, the great jazz musician who we had an exhibition of, who is the jazz advisor to the Kennedy Center, and he performed there out at the sunset in front of the Whitney and looking up towards Little Island. This is the kind of thing I look forward to our being able to do some performance projects together. Trish, it'll be great. Next. We have coming up and two smaller exhibitions in our lobby gallery, the Salman Tour Show. Salman is an extraordinary young painter who has never had a one-person museum show before, who does these wonderful figurative paintings. He's known for these green light paintings of his. They often, you know, they really show the kind of the gay community and that he is very much a part of. But the paintings are very much taken from old master kinds of paintings as well as other contemporary paintings. You see, you know, little bits of Goya and Baroque painting in his work, and truly one of the great young talents, somebody you're going to be hearing more and more about. And that show will be opening in the fall. And we will be open in the fall. I don't know how, but we will be, but I hope so. Then on the right, you have a photograph of Day's End, which is the pier shed right across the street, which was cut up by the artist Gordon Matta Clark. So we're doing a show in conjunction with the opening of David Hammond's installation, which I'll show you in a minute. And that's one of the photographs taken in the 1970s. Next one. And two other shows, the Vita Americana show, which was has had unbelievable reviews and was incredibly popular, but it was only open for 3 weeks. And this is a show that we had spent, frankly, almost 10 years organizing the show, bringing works, and it was the influence of Mexican mural painters on American artists. And what the idea proposed, which was really quite radical, is everybody thinks modern American art came from Europe. It all came from Cubism and Fauvism and Matisse and Picasso. Well, this exhibition proposes that so much of contemporary art, particularly artists like Jackson Pollock and Philip Guston, who knew the work very well of the great Mexican muralists like Siqueiros and Rivera, whose work are on view in the show. Their influence came from Mexico as much as it came from Europe. We have decided to continue this show until January 1 because it was only open. We actually had a venue in Texas. We canceled the venue because we thought there was no way we could not give New Yorkers a chance to come in to see this show. So this will be on view till January 1. The Jasper Johns retrospective that is to happen on his 90th birthday, which actually is next week. This is our great Three Flags painting. This was to be the show that we open with in the fall, but to be safe, we moved it till February, so it'll be our February show. It's a show being organized jointly in 2 locations simultaneously, at the Philadelphia Museum and at the Whitney. It will open 1 day apart. It'll be on view for 3 months. It'll be the largest show of Jasper Johns' work ever. And I think what could be better to start welcoming people back into the museum after a prolonged absence and a sense of kind of, you know, the loss that we've all experienced, but with not just one flag and waving one flag, but waving all 3 flags and many more that'll be in the exhibition. But it will truly be one of the great shows the Whitney has ever organized. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, and so I guess what I would just give you a quick update just to say where we are right now. The Whitney Museum has created a task force of 18 museums in the city of New York. As you know, almost all the museums have been closed since the 1st or 2nd week of March. The Whitney felt really strongly that if all the museums could join together and join their forces and have the same set of protocols and procedures across all the museums in New York, first of all, we could save money, we could save time, but it would also be a great way for museums to collaborate and make our audiences all that more comfortable when they come back to the museum, that if they go to this Museum of Modern Art, or whether they go to the new museum and they go to the Whitney, the procedures and the way that we do it. And it is going to be very complicated. We hope that the museums will be in the first wave of openings because, you know, we already have relatively touchless experiences, and we're used to creating social separation between art and people. And now we just have to create it between people and people. We'll have time tickets. But the directors of the Museum of Natural History, the Holocaust Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, the Met, the Modern, the Guggenheim, the New Museum, the Queens Museum, the Studio Museum, and so many others are all working together to create this set of protocols led by the Whitney, and we're really pleased that that's happening. We do not know when we will open. It is up to the governor to set the opening date for it. But we are hopeful that by chance, maybe later this summer, we'll be able to start to get into the museum, and that by fall we'll be welcoming all of you and everybody else back to it. We miss being there. We miss our home. So again, thank you for the opportunity. And I just wanted to introduce David Breslin. Again, but I'm going to show you first just where we are. I forgot David Hammonds. We are still planning to open it in September, October. We don't know if anybody will be there. It could be a silent opening. We're lucky because the fabrication is all taking place in Toronto. If you move to the next page. There. It's being fabricated in Toronto. They're not on a stop work order right now, so they're able to continue to do it. I wish I could say ours was all being made locally in New York and New York State, but ours, because of the unusual steel materials, actually has been fabricated in 5 different countries and being assembled in Toronto. But all the construction work will happen in New York with New York workers, which we're proud of. And Hunter Roberts is our contractor as well, so we're thrilled. They're really terrific, but you can start to see the elements. It's all being created like Tinker Toys. You know, just to remind you, we didn't create it as a single piece. It's broken into elements that basically, in a way, snap together. So if any piece would ever become damaged, you could replace one piece and you wouldn't have to replace the whole thing. And so that the whole thing would always be standing up, even if one of the elements got damaged by iceberg or something like that, which is highly unlikely because the icebergs don't flow that way. They flow the other way. But you never know. You never know the stray iceberg. I've heard it happened to a ship once. It could happen to something else. We're really thrilled because the piles are now set in the water. Toronto, you can see in the upper right picture, you can begin to see the shape of it taking place, and we're thrilled. You can go to the next slide. And you can see how it will sit in relationship to the new design that Field Operation is planning for Gansevoort Peninsula. There'll be the sandy beach that we all hoped for. There'll be the launching pad for the kayak, and with kayaks, which I am thrilled. I am going to bring my kayak to the museum. They don't know, and I'm going to be storing it there. And they also don't know that my staff, that I'm going to let them use it as long as they don't hold me liable in case something happens. But we should, as I said, be open in October. We have a lot of education programs. We have podcasts that we're planning. We have videos that we're producing that will be both online and on handheld. We have workshops. We have children's guides. We have teacher guides. We're doing oral histories with dozens of people in the neighborhood. And actually, I think you can go to the next slide, and that might be the last. This is, a new, more up-to-date rendering, and it's actually nice. It's a very complimentary view, actually, to Little Island. So you'll look from Little Island towards the park, towards David Hammond's, and towards downtown. What an extraordinary place to spend your time at sunset, and it'll be wonderful. Next slide. And you can see here, we just have a couple of the images that will be as part of our interpretive materials, the original pier shed with the Gwen Mudder Clark, and then the great photograph by Shelley Seacombe, our neighbor, whose work will also be in the show that we're doing that will open in the fall, the Around Day's End show. So thank you all for giving me more than my time, a lot of time to do this. And let me introduce David Breslin, who's our Director of Special Initiatives. And he's also the curator of the next biennial, and we hope that will be soon as well, too. So, and he did the wonderful David Wojnarowicz show, and one of the great shows that presaged all the protests of the Whitney called The Incomplete History of Protest. He organized the show from the collection. Little did he know that the reason it was incomplete is the protests would start at the museum the next year. But happily, those have moved on, and now we're on to yet other exciting issues. So take it away, David, and thank you all, unless anybody has any questions. And it's nice to see you, Susanna, on there, too.
Yeah, Susanna joined us.
Yes, I'm thrilled.
And do we want to take, Rob, do you want questions before we go to David?
What do you want to do, Rick?
Why don't we do that in case Adam needs to go? And also, I don't want to have people forget anything they may want to ask him.
Okay, sure. My pleasure.
Sorry.
Do we have any?
Sorry I
committee
went
members?
so long.
No, we are so happy you're here and you're enthusiastic to speak with us.
Yeah,
It looks like, yes, we had a thank you to you from Jacob in chat. Before we go to the public for any questions, I just want to see if any of our committee members would like to ask you any questions. So far, I do not see any hands up. Do you, Rich?
Nope.
Oh,
wait, Matt. There's Matt Metzger.
All right.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Awesome. So this is a little off topic.
Sure.
But given the world that we're living in and the future that we're about to exist in, it's one of the lesser concerns, frankly, but a concern nonetheless, is that museums and other cultural institutions are going to be the playground, frankly, of the rich, and that the people who need it the most are not going to have access to it, whether that is through paywalls or whatever. Are there any efforts at least being contemplated about ensuring access to all communities?
Well, first of all, what we have always done is we have Friday night, which is Pay What You Wish, which is still our most popular night. So that will be in perpetuity. But I will say, unofficially, one of the things that I've been looking at, we know that there are 875,000 New Yorkers out of work. And, obviously, a lot of how we support ourselves is through our ticket sales. But I feel that, the Whitney, as I said, is of, by, and for the city of New York. And I've been speaking to my board to see if during the first months that we're opening, whether we can have many, many, many more days that are for free. Now, we won't be able to always do that in perpetuity. But the one thing I can tell you is we will have more free access days in the first months anyway to welcome people back to the Whitney and to make sure that people who right now are out of work who can't afford to come would make sure to have the opportunities to come. So I can't say exactly how many weeks or months that'll be, but I promise you it'll be many more days initially, and then we will have the ongoing day on Fridays. So you're thinking the same way I am too. I mean, it literally brings tears to my eyes to think the struggles that people are going through right now. And museums are our current day churches and temples, and these in many ways have to be the place where we as a community could start to gather again and be hopeful. And the great German artist Gerhard Richter said, "Art is the highest form of hope." And that's something that I think about every single day, is that art is that thing that gives people hope and a sense of beauty and the sense that there's more to life than the hard times we're going through. So thank you for asking that question, and I'm with you all the way.
Appreciate it.
I see two other hands up. I'll let Rich, you decide who goes.
Georgia and Susanna.
Hello.
Hi, Georgia. How are you?
Hi, I'll put my real face on. I'm piggybacking off Matt's question in regards to the K-5, K-12 setting. In the governor's budget, the school budget will be massively cut, and I'm curious how the Whitney and its other museum partners will ramp up their education piece to help support our schools. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that, Georgia. It's something that we are deeply committed to. And number one, anybody under the age of 19 is free at all times. 18 and under, so basically under the age of 19, is free at all times to the Whitney. All of our school tours are always free. I hope we can find some money, some field trip money, for additional schools. Right now, we announced extra school online workshops. We had 34 places for 35 different schools. Within one day of putting it online, every single one was subscribed. One of my big concerns, Georgia, and I've been talking to our education team about it, is are the schools even going to, even if they have the money, given the amount of time that is being lost right now in terms of classroom time when they get back, is there even going to be time for field trips? So one of the things that we are doing a lot of, and we will do more of, is more teacher training. We have a Teacher Summer Institute, teacher training, because frankly, we're going to have to do more in the schools as much as we want to get them to the museum, at least in the short run, because even if the money's available, the teachers are going to have a hard time convincing their principals they should be taking time for field trips. So, this is something we're deeply committed to. This is why our education programs have increased by 30% since we've gone downtown. And all our education programs will be ramped up in the fall, and all of them will be online. We will have we decided that we wouldn't expect there to be in the fall program, so we on site because of the social separation issues probably, and group and not being able to bring people together. So we are going to increase our online offerings to schools in the fall, and then God willing, as my grandmother used to say, in January we can start to bring people back in the museum. So thank you for asking. I think Susanna had a question, was it?
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Susanna. I'm so happy to see you.
Same here. And I'm so happy that you're extending the Mexican muralist show, because it was really one of the most sophisticated things I've seen in a long time. I wanted to ask you, when you finally do open up, I'm going to guess that at least for a certain amount of time, it's going to be under different circumstances with lesser volume. And I'm just wondering how all of this is rocking your fiscal status, your health. How is your financial health as an institution?
I would say, the Whitney is lucky. We will survive it. We laid off 20% of our staff. We have a $7 million shortfall in revenue just between March and the end of June. We're lucky because we did get a PPP loan from the government that is helping us to keep staff on longer. A number of the trustees came in with money without even being asked to help keep staff on too, which is great. We've had foundations like the Hearst Foundation, the Bloomberg Foundation, that have given us money unsolicited. I'm a little less worried in a way in the short term. I'm more worried in the long term, to be frank, because, as I said, we're getting about 1 million people a year. We're expecting at best half that number for this year. And that is going to have a huge hit for the Whitney. And most of the museum directors are thinking it's going to be a 2 to 3 year period minimum to get back to where we were in attendance. We are slashing a lot of our budgets. We're trying to keep the rest of our staff, because the 20% we did cut were staff who were mostly not able to work because they were visitor services, and they were people, all of them were people who'd been at the museum less than 2 years. Just the way we built a building, we built a staff over the last 5 years, and it was person by person, and we have an extraordinary group of devoted staff who are, very dear friends, so many of them, and I am worried, but worrying doesn't get you anywhere. I always have to be optimistic. We are being very careful and we're working in advance to get people to advance money for cash flow. So people who've made pledges that are farther out are putting monies back in. And we're working like crazy to fundraise, and we're hoping we can hold the line. I mean, we will weather it. I mean, there are smaller institutions that may not, and frankly, I'm more worried longer term in a way for the theaters, the concert halls, the opera houses, any place where people have to be in groups, because I heard, for example, just the other day that in Carnegie Hall, which has 2,800 seats, that if they enforced social distancing at Carnegie Hall, they couldn't have more than 400 or 500 people there, and they couldn't possibly support themselves in 400 or 500. And the good thing, as I was saying, is we already can do social separation. People don't have to sit right next to people. People, we can clean things continuously, because even while people are looking at things, you can have people washing things down. You can't have people going into the theater in the middle of a thing and cleaning a seat, or the bathrooms are very small in theaters. I'm very worried for the cultural community in New York. It's very, very, very tough. And what I said to my staff in our first all staff meeting online today, I said, the museum we closed in March is not going to be the same museum we open again. And we're not going back to that museum in the same way. It has to be a new Whitney, and we have to do things in a different way. And it's, it makes me nervous, but I know that, when the future in many ways has been decided for us, we have no choice but to go forward and to try to embrace that future, as uncertain as it is. But, I think, the thing I'm probably most proud of, Suzanne, and I'll end with this, is that one thing I realized, and I started my talk, and this is a great way to end it, is that, the first people who are going to be welcoming back to the museum are the people who can walk to the Whitney and the people who can ride their bikes, because people are not going to be getting on buses and subways in a hurry. And I love the fact that it's going to be starting as a community museum, and it's really going to be for people who are, really kind of downtown West Siders for the most part. And it starts where we are. And, we always know that this is our heart, this is our home, this is where we're based. And what could be better than to have our first people that we welcome in the door, the people who are from our community? And that, to me, is really special. It really is. It means a lot to us. And look, it may be that we are our community museum for 3, 6 months or even longer. How many people will be willing to travel farther? So that's good news. We're a great community, and it's a large community. So thank you for that question.
So it sounds like you'll be getting more bike racks or a city bike stop over there.
Yeah, we got them right in front, and we will do everything we can to encourage people to walk and ride their bikes, and we will get a lot of West Siders going right down the Hudson River Park, I'm sure.
Yeah. Robin Carter has a question but can't raise his hand.
Hey, Adam. You actually segued directly into my question, which is, I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of visitors coming in to our community anytime soon, or even to the city, depending on, what you classify as a visitor. How much of your daily traffic is made up from people from out of town, from other areas?
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just wondering if you guys will just lead in naturally with the local be visiting you into the growth.
I think that's exactly it, Carter. I mean, it's interesting, and I think we're very fortunate. We're roughly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 New Yorkers, 1/3 national, 1/3 international. Places like the Met or the Guggenheim are 67% international.
Wow.
I don't know when their audiences are now. Will they get a lot more people from New York? I'm sure they will, and I hope they do. The Museum of Modern Art, I think, is 55% international. So I mean, that's consistent. The other thing that the Whitney is very lucky is we have a very young audience. Our average audience age is a lot younger than I am. I'm a senior citizen now. The average, person, as I think it's I think it's around 37 years old or something like that. And as we know, COVID is frankly the greater risk for people. Of course they say 65, but the risks are much lower for younger people. And so I think what's going to happen is we're going to get a lot of people who are young people, and we're going to get a lot of people from the neighborhood. And I think that is just great. That's where we want to start. I've always loved the phrase glocal, being local and global. And I feel the Whitney is a glocal organization. It's like we are deeply rooted in our neighborhood and our community, and always have been.
Great. All right. Any final thoughts, Adam? Otherwise, I'll turn over to
No, again, I just want to thank the community board. You all have been extraordinary to us. You have been welcoming and warm, even before we opened our doors. You made us feel like we, have been part of the community, and it's a joy to work with all of you. Thank you for being such wonderful friends, really.
Well, right back at you. You were always transparent with us before, and you're always open to us with meetings, and you're very generous with your cookies. I don't think you stopped with those because you changed your diet, but I love the cookies.
I stopped eating them, but there's more for you.
No, but the point being, you're always very warm and open to us. So it's a love fest back at you. So thank you.
Thank you. David, you want to say a few words about the online?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I'll go through this quickly. But I wanted to thank all of you for allowing me to present, and hope to meet all of you soon when this is past us, and also for giving me an opportunity to inadvertently dress exactly like Adam today. I promise I didn't plan this. I just wanted to say that a lot of what Adam said resonates with what we're trying to do with our digital programs, because we can't, in some ways, change what history is doing, but we can try to make sure that the same spirit and mission goes into what we're trying to do online, and also just making it as hospitable a place for our audiences and our neighbors and artists who really are our key constituents. So we've put together, and I'll just give you a sampling of some of the programs that we've been putting online to educate, enlighten, entertain, distract during this moment. This first group of works is called Whitney Screens, and every Friday night at 7 o'clock, we're featuring artworks from our collection. These are all videos. These are mostly works that recently have come into our collection. And it's a great way to support these artists to present their works, but they're also such great artworks for us to be able to see. These are up at 7 o'clock, and then for 24 hours, they loop. So if you miss it at 7, don't worry, you can come and see it again. These are all introduced by a curator talking about why she or he or they has selected that work for the collection. The next slide, please. This is something called Whitney Wednesdays. Actually, one just ended while we were on this call. But it's something that we wanted to do to kind of show the inner workings of the Whitney family and community. And we do this on 7 o'clock on Wednesdays. It's on Instagram Live. And it's really a way for people within the community to talk about what they're doing, how they're working, how they're getting through things. So last week we had this great talk by the two that you see on screen. Peter Scott, who's our head of facilities, and Rue Hockley, who's a great colleague in the curatorial department. And they were talking about two things. One, which was how facilities and curatorial work together on a performance during the last biennial that involved having the system, the water mitigating system outside put up, and an artist did a really beautiful reimagining of what that could be. And they also want to talk about what it's like to run a museum when it's closed to the public, but still needs to be running and efficient. And it was really great to see these two. Just now, Laurie Friedman, our head of product development, had this conversation with Elizabeth Yeager. Elizabeth Yeager is a wonderful artist who's in our collection. And she's doing this great project, which is trying to get artwork in the form of new posters into break rooms at hospitals across New York City and the world. So a really, I think, important thing to talk about how artists are really working with our community. And then next week, Scott Rothkopf, our chief curator, will be talking with Glenn Ligon, the fantastic artist. And I know one of the things they want to talk about is that great piece of Glenn's that you see when you walk into the lobby, the America piece called Rookin' Figure, and what it's like to show work that's present but not accessible. So this kind of tension. So I'm looking forward to that. Next slide, Jane. Our education department, as Adam said, has kicked into overtime to put together some really great programs. Two of these are art history and art making from home. So art history from home are done twice a week. There's one tomorrow at noon, and there's one on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock, so that as many people based on schedules can see what's possible. And these are our teaching fellows giving an in-depth conversation about a theme from the collection, whether it's art and technology, whether it's self-portraiture. And really quick, 30 minutes, but very insightful. You can sign on for these on our website. It's like signing on to this conversation where you'll get a password. And I really recommend if you have the time to check into that. And then art making from home is done on Saturdays at 3, and it sounds very much like what Trish and Michael were talking about with their program. How can we here at home with the stuff that is around us really kind of be able to facilitate what children and adults can do together to make artwork? And that's taking inspiration from a collection exhibition that's on right now called Making Knowing Craft and Art from 1950 to 2015. A really wonderful show, and it's really taking the heart of that exhibition, the DIY, do-it-yourself ethic, and creating artwork with the stuff that you have at hand. And the next slide, please, Jane. And then this is just a reminder that we've also pivoted to putting so much stuff and highlighting what is on our website to make it even more accessible. And you know, anything from browsing our collection to the great talk that Adam and Jason Moran gave. You see that at the bottom right, you can see these great talks that we did, to things that really highlight what our exhibitions have been. The Vita Americana exhibition that Susanna mentioned earlier is really highlighted here well in great ways. All bilingual texts, all very fantastic films and videos that really give an insider view of what's happening with those exhibitions. Also artwork that was born for the internet with something called Artport that we've been doing for years that are commissioned works by artists for things that live online. So there are great resources here. I invite you to explore them if you have a chance, and if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
Just looking to see if any of our committee members have any questions. So far I see no one. Going once, going twice. I'm now moving to our public attendees to see if anybody there has any questions about what we just heard. Seeing none, I think that is a wrap on that. We probably have one more. I think I'll leave it to Jane to turn over to Larissa. Is that correct?
Larissa was just joining us in case there are any questions about Day's End, and she unfortunately had to log off. But thank you again for hosting us and letting us share an update on Day's End and the museum and all of our online programs. We hope to be back again soon.
So I think our Parks Committee, I don't know if anybody on the Parks Committee has questions about the construction of the artwork Day's End. I'm just going to give them that chance to ask anything they might want to ask about.
Can I was just taking some notes. Can I, am I right in saying October or November was what you said? Hold on, I got to unmute you there.
We were told we still think we can make it by October. The stop work order, I believe, and Trish, Trish would know different, but they got a special range that they were able to open up earlier. We're going to be able to start the construction again on site, I think on the 15th, I think is what they're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I don't think we have anything else further to discuss. I'll just check in with Jane to make sure I didn't leave anything out. Your agenda? Nope.
No, we covered it all. Thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, David.
Great to see you, David. It's nice to see all of you. Rosia, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Coral, great.
Stay safe.
Yeah, I'm gonna go have my dinner.
Okay. Any arts committee people
make that my
remaining?
lunch.
We will not have a business session online since there is no resolutions, but I will follow up with you on email just to make sure I have the attendance correct, and also just to see where your head is at as far as future meetings. I think it's good for us to stay connected. Like in this way, I found this to be a really important meeting. So I hope we can do more of these going forward. Rich, any final thoughts?
Parks Committee meetings Parks Committee members, if you have a second and could hang on there, was a topic of around masks in Hudson River Park and other parks that some people had raised to me in separate emails. And if okay, I just would like to get a feeling of how people feel about it.
You want me to hang on for that too, Rich? Since,
yes, please.
You got
If you guys can stay, that'd be great. Hopefully it won't be too long.
Well, I'll probably stay around. I'm curious to hear you discuss it.
Well, thanks, and thanks to the arts and institution members to hear about park stuff, and thanks to the park committee members to hear about, and waterfront committee members to hear about all the Whitney museum information, which I hope you enjoyed. I thought it was really great.
Mm-hmm.
So
now on to masks. Very exciting.
Yeah, so as I said, there were it wasn't on the agenda. It just came up over the last couple days. There were some conversations. It sort of came out of this past weekend, primarily when people went out to the parks, and they went to Hudson River Park, and not everyone was wearing a mask, and there's some questions as to whether or not everyone in the park should wear a mask, and whether we should, whether it's right to tell somebody, or point to their face if they don't have a mask, and so I just wanted to get a feel from people, and if anyone has insights into what the real law is or what they experience, I wanted to just have an opportunity to discuss that.
I broached this question with Noreen yesterday, Rich, and there is no law that says you have to wear a mask. But one of the things that we're working on right now is opening up West Street for a lane of bicycle traffic and actually running traffic, so that anyone who's entering the park can't go over a certain speed limit. Like they can't even be a jogger. They have to be walking, so that if they aren't wearing a mask, they aren't spitting or coughing or actually promoting the virus in a way with speed. So as Carter mentioned a couple of days ago, the New York State Department of Transportation has a work order for repaving West Street right now, which actually would put a little bit of a problem in actually opening up one lane. But we're working on that jointly with CB1 and CB4, and hoping at our next executive committee to promote a cycle and fast-moving pedestrian area for West Street.
Okay. Yeah, surely this came out of a lot of work that Shirley's committee had done. I'm not sure that everyone was at the full board meeting, and then it expanded this week, or the rules were changed, or the guidelines were changed again. So this is carrying on and ties into the Open Streets initiative. But the real question was, is there anything that if we have a resolution, or if we sort of look for guidance, or if we came up with some sort of suggestions, I'm struggling to figure out, I'm glad you said this, Dan, what the PEP officers and what the police are looking to do in terms of enforcing the wearing of masks, right? And because I do think it's somewhat subjective. I think the guideline that the governor put forth is that you need to wear a mask when you can't practice social, distancing. When you are not able to stay 6 feet away, then you should have a mask that you can put on. And I think that's a hard thing for the police to enforce potentially.
Rich?
Any other stuff? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's one question which will be like, what is the rule and what is the enforcement? I think there's another thing developing that always develops in these circumstances, which is what is the etiquette? And already, if you walk down the street, you can sense what the etiquette is. So I think that there will be that at play, whether there's official rules or not, or official enforcement or not. There are going to be people who get pissed off if you run by them and don't put your mask on. And I think the other thing is that this situation is going to change so quickly that it's very hard to know where we'll be in 3 months, what will still linger in terms of our usages and the new normal. Anyway, so I guess, which is a long way of saying I don't have an opinion.
All
I
right.
think like whatever rules we're going to have, they're going to, we'll be hearing about them from the governor, and they'll be trickling down through all of us.
Yeah, Janine, you had a comment. Let me unmute. Let me make sure you're unmuted there. Yeah.
No,
Go ahead.
okay. I think it's a good idea to have just signage everywhere that says, encourage social distancing and masks, and just, I mean, you can't, you can't legally enforce it, you can legally remind people of it, and they're, I mean, that's the best we can do, because this is not going to be something that's enforced. But I just think it's important to have signage, and if people ignore it, that's one thing. But right now, I think it would be helpful if the Hudson River Park, which can create their own temporary signs, could do something about, recommending social distancing and masks.
Carter, are you still? Oh yeah, Carter, you're still on. Have you
the
heard
city
anything from the?
has all those worksheets? I don't know. Everybody's seen them taped up around the city, or if they're up in some of the buildings, which is sort of the general guidelines of, stop the spread. Why, maybe the park should come up with their own variant of that. That includes, what you should be doing in parks, not necessarily what the law is, but, just reminders, running, put a face, having a symbol of a runner with a face mask or whatever it may be. But then there's the flip side, is the weather's starting to get warmer. I don't know if you tried to do any physical activity with most masks on, it's not very comfortable, especially if you're doing it at a level of exercise.
Yeah.
I know even just riding my bike around, it's, if you're wearing a thin cloth one, it's acceptable. If you're wearing one of those, sort of blue surgical mask type things, that's not so great.
Yeah.
And, you kind of feel like you're wheezing after a little bit. So, the idea is to just get it a practical solution that people will in fact follow.
Yeah. But don't cut a hole for your nose and mouth like that video that went around. That's not a practical. That's not the practical solution. But yeah. So have you heard anything from the police or from the precinct specifically that that they were going to enforce something, or they're going to arrest people? Or
that's a good question. I talked to the lieutenant who was handing out masks in Washington Square Park on Sunday, and I just had a brief conversation that their unit had been through, I think, 4 or 5 different parks. And I think the challenge is when they're groupings of people, if people are sitting down, they don't know the relationship between those people when they're sitting down. So it becomes very complicated to have any discussions with them, because they may, they could be members of the same household, people who are sharing spaces, what's the difference between that group and a family? So they really enunciated sort of some of the complications in the parks specifically of people sitting down. And they also said that most people who were moving around seemed to be complying with the mask orders, but when people stopped and sat down, that's when people were removing the masks. So, I haven't spoken specifically with the 6th precinct. Obviously, Betty, who's on here tonight, brought up on Monday night at our executive committee meeting, it's like sort of the inequities of an enforcement of this. And in fact, who even enforces the law, what are appropriate ways to do that. And, I think you had mentioned it on Pier 45, the PEP officers asked the crowd to move themselves from the newly seeded lawn, which then resulted in what, some pictures looked like it was overcrowded, others didn't quite look so bad. But I think we all have slightly, what is the metric and what is the measurement and what's acceptable and what's not. I think different people have different levels of that. And I think that as a community, one of the things I want to encourage is that mask use, should be encouraged, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the etiquette, I mean, I don't know if anybody here has seen anybody yelling at somebody on the street, but it becomes very unpleasant very quickly. And, and some people just don't care. I mean, it seems, but I don't know.
Anyone else had any input or
Yeah,
question?
I just
I'm
wanted
sorry.
to make a comment because the Hudson River Park Trust has done a lot of research in their signage. And they have found that signage, like additional mask signage, doesn't necessarily help much. Doesn't help with cyclists in the crosswalks, doesn't help with a lot of other issues. Where social pressure, which you're talking about, is a much more successful way of going about it. But that's why I feel as though if no cycles are allowed whatsoever, no runners are allowed whatsoever in the park, people are able to space out, able to social distance. And you're right about those pictures, Carter. A lot of them are shot with long lenses, and what that does is it compresses distance, and it creates a little bit of a hysteria where the hysteria shouldn't actually exist. So anyway, I really do feel as there's a solution here. But I think signage should go up, and I think the trust is planning on signage, but don't rely on that to change people's habits.
Okay. Coral had her hand up too.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment on the signage, because I think signage that is, sort of redundant of like keep social distance, wear a mask is ignored. I think it has to be a step further, and I don't know what the exact verbiage should be, but something like New Yorkers protect each other, wear a mask, or like some sort of level of shaming in there, like you should do this. Or, New Yorkers have each other's back, wear a mask. Like something that's clearly like you're choosing not to protect your neighbor, or be a good neighbor, wear a mask. Something where it's clearly like you're choosing to not do that by not wearing a mask. You're not just ignoring the, stay 6 feet away from the water. Because, every time I get these, like even these NYPD community updates, they're so infuriating because it's not local, it's not specific. It's just like the WHO stuff. You're like, whatever, we got that. I read that. I got the wear a mask. I need to have like the locals say, like, you're one of us. We protect each other. You're choosing not to do that. So I would just, somehow have it be a little bit more direct. And I think, New Yorkers can take that.
Okay. Jonathan liked your comment, Coral, in the chat there. Susanna, I cut you off. Did you want to say something? You got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I had a question for Daniel. Daniel, are you saying that the park is planning on not allowing people to jog in the park?
No. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying there's an advisory council resolution out there to open up one lane of West Street.
Okay.
And the question is, if we open up that one lane of West Street, what's going to stop the cyclists and the runners from being on the bikeway, the greenway? So one of the things we're trying to figure out, and this has been brought up by several community board members as well as outside the community, is how can we keep that faster moving traffic outside of a zone where people are moving slowly, where there's strollers and people walking? And how can we turn the greenway actually into an extension of the park?
So there was some talk about can you get the bike riders to go on 9A and the walkers to go in the, that's what you meant, right, Dan?
That's correct, Rich.
Yeah. Anyone else? I'll try to get some clarification from Steve and the parks people, because we're talking not just Hudson River Park, but also places like Washington Square Park. I'll see if they have any intention on giving summons or trying to enforce something. As Carter said, they were handing out some masks, and I think they'll continue to do that. We'll try to check in with the precinct to see. I feel like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, Mar. I've got forgot I saw you come up here too. Mar, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to. I know that we can't enforce it in the park, but is there a way to get the park designated? Like the executive order says, where social distancing is not possible, right?
Right.
Why can't we assume or designate that it's not possible in the park for the sheer numbers that have been there? Why can't we have the park designated as a place? And then the signs would say, this park is designated as a mask mandatory location. And then it's done.
I can ask.
Thanks.
Can I just make a quick comment about that, since I can't raise my hand?
Go ahead, Rob.
I tend to use the park as a runner early in the morning during the week. And to be honest, the times that I've used it, it's really been very empty. I mean, and that's why I go there then. And I would be kind of annoyed if I was forced to wear a mask at an early time when there's really like nobody within nowhere within 12, 20 feet from me, because that's the time that's, that I designate for my good exercise early in the morning. I've determined when that is. So, I mean, I can agree with that idea if there are maybe sort of like, high times, designated hours where people have to wear masks, but not all the time.
Well,
After 9 a.m. when it starts, when people start trickling in would be good.
Yeah. I tell you, I was like with Robin. I went out at 6. There was no one there. It was very empty by 6, but by the time, by 7, it got more crowded. So it changes within, the day. And I think even before 9 on the weekdays. There are a couple more people that wanted to come. And Nancy, you wanted to, you wanted to speak.
I just wanted to say that I don't really think that we can even consider lumping runners and cyclists in all together in one area. I think that that's dangerous. I mean, I understand that people have the idea that it's runners that are spreading the virus more than anybody else in the park. I think people should wear masks, but I think to just sort of push everybody that's moving over a certain speed into one area really creates an unsafe situation.
I see what you mean. Matt, you have your hand up too.
Seconding Coral and strongly seconding Mar. I think I don't think it'll surprise anybody that I think we should do more than encourage. It's mandatory. What happens if you don't do it? Nothing happens, but it's mandatory. You got to do it. And I think that if it's empty, it won't be enforced. But I think that we really want to get in the mentality of, if you're in a populated place, you're wearing a mask. If you're around family in a populated place, you're wearing a mask. If you're walking down the street and there's nobody walking near you, you can take it down. But it is just so clear to me, and I think a number of studies would support me that mask wearing and serious mask wearing with a good hand hygiene regimen where you're using hand sanitizer before you put your mask on, you're using hand sanitizer before you take it off, you're using it consistently through the day, has an incredible effect on spreads of diseases like this. I think the margin we'll figure out, but I think the core message, and I think we should say it very publicly, is everybody's wearing a mask, at least for the near future. If it gets better, it gets better. We can adjust. And a silence falls over the crowd.
Hear, hear.
Are you saying something, Rich? I can't hear. Rich, you're on
Rich,
mute.
I think you're muted.
Rich, you're on mute.
Gosh,
Oh,
sorry, my apartment mates were making noise. Sorry. Georgia and Eugene are up next. Georgia, you want to go first? You had your hand up.
Yes. So 2 comments. One, I agree with sort of the hardcore nature. My family and I, we go out together and each of us wears a mask around each other when we're outside. It's about individuals protecting the other members of the community. So that's the first point. And, to Robin, the way that Central Park has off-leash dog hours, there could be run hours. So then the second point is we could also, and these things are not mutually exclusive, we could make the mandate a bit fun. So we're a really artistic community. There are a lot of artists who are out of work. We could do a call for artists to create some kind of a performance in the park that encourages people to wear their mask. And it would be silly and goofy and engaging, and it could rotate among parks, perhaps, and it could be performed during peak hours. And, maybe it's a satire, maybe it's sarcasm. I don't know, just Because I think in a way, so some people might respond to the hardcore message and some people will be so turned off. But if you make it fun, those people are turned off by the hardcore might just say, okay, I'll wear my mask in the park because this is kind of engaging. It doesn't hurt to try several different approaches because there are so many different kinds of people in our community. And unfortunately, we're not like Spain, where they decided everybody, including kids, were gonna stay inside for 24 hours for 6 weeks.
Yeah. Eugene, did you want to say something? You have your hand up. Yeah, I think you're okay now. I can't hear you. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. Yeah, it says you're not muted. You see your little phone, but I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh,
You
sorry,
are-
my phone was muted.
Ah,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Just glad it was
Okay,
me.
sorry, I was double muted. I mean, I think as like the weather gets warmer, I mean, I don't know about everyone else. It's just like this past week, I mean, I think just like the last couple of days, I've just been really surprised at the number of people I've just seen out and about on the streets, just very casually with their masks or without their masks, or just, wearing their masks, but, also talking on their phone with their mask off, or not social distancing. I mean, I know we're talking about parks, but it just seems everyone's getting very casual very quickly. And I just feel like it's not a time to let our guards down. And I would very much like to see more messaging about masks and just keep people reminded that they need to keep wearing them. And, I think in parks, like I think the 6-foot rule doesn't really make a lot of sense, to be honest. I mean, if you're downwind from someone, you're much more, you're going to get all their, aerosol, whatever. So, I mean, it's not just necessarily being 6-10 feet away from someone. If you're in someone's airstream, you're getting all of their whatever they're spitting out of their mouth. So, I mean, I think in an outdoor environment, when you're running, when you're walking, whichever way the wind's blowing, it just seems like this. We talk about a 6-foot rule. I don't think it's as straight cut as straightforward as that.
Yeah.
But I think if everyone's much more conscious of what they need to be doing, and also aware that, wearing a mask doesn't mean you can't, you don't have the right to just go up to anybody either and just be 2 feet away from them, which is what I saw happening a lot this week. So, I'm just concerned that, people are just letting guards down pretty quickly. And I was hearing today just from the governor's, daily conference that a lot of the new infections were coming from people that were staying at home, as opposed to people that were, essential personnel. So, I mean, there's been kind of a shift, and it would be a shame to have a lot of new infections just come up just because people were relaxing their guard.
Okay. Well, this weekend it's gonna drop to 38 degrees, so maybe we won't have as many people out. But tomorrow's gonna be nice. It's gonna be nice next week. Valerie, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I think we can all generally agree that on weekends, I mean, with this weekend, as you've now just reported on the forecast, maybe not so much, but as we go into these summer months, like the weekend is always going to be more crowded in general. So is it a weekend versus a weekday thing? Maybe. Just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Donna, you have your hand up too.
Yeah, I just wanted to, well, in terms of that, it might be something also about the sitting areas being more crowded than the walking area. And I like the idea of the signage and doing some different kind of creative signage, like Coral was saying, so it doesn't look like the same old bullet points that you just have sitting there so people are reading.
And Georgia's point too, yeah. Well, look, I think there are three different groups that and I'll pledge and with some of my colleagues here, we can check in with the the trust. We can we can check in with parks around what the PEP officers are being directed to do, and we can check in with the precinct to see if there are some guidelines that I'd like to know what they're being directed to do and what they would like to see. So that's one category of effort. And then there's the suggestions of the signage and trying to get some feedback on whether signage would be seen as beneficial by those groups, and if so, how we might help contribute to designing those or getting those worded properly. All right, so I may ask some of you for assistance in reaching out. Anybody I'm forgetting, any other groups that?
Rich, I was going to say, one of the nice things about signs that we want to remind people is they're good for all of us to be able to point to.
Yeah.
Say, look, you should, it's an affirmation of what we believe in, and it's wear a mask. And while it may not be mandated, like you're going to be arrested type of thing, it's just the best practices in the park, what you should do. And while I agree with Dan, I'm not sure that seeing it on its own changes behavior. It does reinforce anybody's position and says, look, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
It makes it easier for the public to have that conversation with others who might not be wearing masks.
Yeah, somebody made a point this morning. I don't even remember where I heard it or read it, but somebody said the big reduction in smoking was not that, hey, if you smoke, you're going to get sick, but the whole concept of secondhand smoke. You're going to get your kids sick, you're going to get your friends sick. And that was a big driver of the change of, moving smoking outside and things like that. So there is a precedent for changing, behavior by appealing to that idea of, hurting others or affecting others.
And we're also really in the first warm week of the next 5 months. This is a evolving conversation we have to give a little bit of space for everybody also to catch up on what the right behaviors are before we jump too fast.
That's true.
As people collectively, as New Yorkers say, oh, this is the better way of doing it, and it catches on.
Yeah, I think that was Susanna's point early on. That's going to keep changing because it gets warmer, and it gets harder to wear the mask when it's warmer, I think, too. It's not just when you're running. And then if you switch to the linen mask, that's probably not as effective, for the summer months or the, Well, all right. So I pledge to try to get some more information and pass it along to everyone, at least to give us more of a full picture of what others are thinking on this, and especially those that are in a position to, thinking of a different word than enforce, but to try to get the crowds to play along properly. All right. And I appreciate everyone staying an extra 20 minutes or so, and hopefully I've reached everyone who wanted to comment. But
Jonathan has his hand up.
I'm sorry?
Jonathan has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jonathan. I didn't see that. Did you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to beg people's wise perspective. I had an initiative I was pursuing until yesterday when the governor made his announcement about PSAs. I was trying to recruit celebrities to home record themselves making a pitch for people to wear masks. And then I didn't know what to do with that after the governor made his announcement yesterday that he was trying to do something statewide. But now that you've brought this up about our community, it seemed to me that we had very powerful opinions, people who could be very influential of the celebrities living in our neighborhood. If they would record messages that not to wear a mask is not village cool. I thought that could be very persuasive. And West Village Cool could be even very influential citywide and nationwide.
Yeah, I encourage you to. I encourage you to move forward on that, and I'll socialize that idea too. But as you said, you made a point.
You can start it with social media. I'm a theater publicist, and my social media specialist has volunteered to take the ball and run with it. And I feel that my gift is not writing perfect 30-second copy. But I know there are people in our community who are really good at it. And if we could make a little committee, I bet we could come up with really great stuff. And we could do a lot of good just with our own resources.
All right. And there are many groups. They're the different, they're the obviously the block associations, but the different groups that support the different parks that might get behind spreading that word as well.
Rich, it's Coral. I just had one last thing too.
Yes.
So I was thinking on, is celebrities may be effective in some ways, but even stronger might be like having frontline responders saying, we're doing our part, please do yours, wear a mask.
Idea. Yeah, that is
like we're doing our part, you do yours, wear the mask. Because at this point, it's they're putting their lives on the line, we can freaking wear a mask. So that would be my input on that. And then the other part is making it clear, families are gonna have trouble with children under 3 wearing a mask. It's just almost impossible to keep kids that don't want to have a mask on with a mask on. And you're going to see families, and we already see that in parks with like a kid in a stroller and a 2-year-old walking, and they're not going to have a mask on. So there shouldn't be like, people freaking out about that family not having the mask. And I don't know, that's just going to be a very hard dynamic because people that don't have children will think that they're being irresponsible. And I don't know, that's going to be a hard one.
That'd be hard. Yeah, you're right. Well, we'll keep moving this forward. And as surely I started with this, I think this will end up intersecting or overlapping with the open streets protocols that get adopted as well. I'm sure. So we'll sync up on that. Well, thanks everyone. Almost 2 hours. Thanks for staying around a little later, and hope you enjoyed the meeting.
Yeah, thanks for everybody. And I thought that last topic on the masks was worth sticking around for.
I'm glad. I wasn't sure, but I'm glad it worked out. And Rob and I have some notes. I'll send them to you for we can combine them.
Okay, and we'll be able to access this recording, right, internally?
Yep, and we'll have a list of the attendees, I think, too. I took up some. I grabbed it. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Rich.
Be safe. Yeah, thanks for joining. Wear a mask.
Good night, everybody. Great meeting.
Night.
Carter, I want my CB2 mask.
What was that?
I want my CB2 mask. Like, shouldn't we have like CB2 masks? Come on, we have Zoom. I want my like, CB2 mask.
What, with the little printed on the side?
Yeah, something,
Right across the mouth?
Okay, take care.
All right, good night, Coral.